What's up guys, and welcome back to Pop Beat Breakdowns. In today's video I wanted to do something a little bit different on this channel to try and add a little bit more value for building and refining your craft as a producer. Today we're going to be talking about building a basic string section. This is part of an emotional pop ballad that I made just today for my Type Beat channel, and I thought, hey, what a good video could be would actually be able to show you how to start building a string section from the ground up very simply. So this is anything that anyone can do. Doesn't matter so much about the software you're doing, but just the principle of more of the music theory side of building up a string section so you can make it sound not only big and full but also have a little bit of movement to it so it sounds a lot more interesting. So smash that subscribe button if you are new to this channel, by the way, trying to get to 1,000 subscribers as quick as possible, and you can make that happen. So yeah, with that mandatory out of the way, let's get into Logic and let's see the string section. Okay, so we are now in Logic and this is the emotional pop ballad that I made today. And again, I thought this would be a really good breakdown to do because it's a very simple 5-track piano ballad, which is very easy for anyone to make, especially if just in the demo songwriting sort of stage you want to try and add a little bit of production to some songs you've been writing, but more importantly, building a string section. I'm only using 4 tracks for this string section, but we're making it sound really big, really full, and also have some movement to it as well, so it's a lot more interesting than just playing in a triad chord of just every time the chord changes of strings, because that's not an interesting string section. We want to try and be a bit more creative. So this is very easy to do. First thing is I've laid down some piano. The chords are C, E, A minor, G and F. Now the reason why, if you're practicing to build a string section, you know, a little bit of theory, I always recommend that you start by practicing in the key of C major, because it's just using all of the white keys. It's a very good way to start not only writing interesting chord patterns of a string section, but also implementing melodies where there isn't really much margin for error going wrong, so you can really mess around with melodies and try and add movement to string sections. So again, if you're practicing building strings, writing strings, I always recommend you practice in C major because that is the easiest key to write strings in. So with that out the way, let's have a listen to the piano. This is just, for anyone who's wondering, by the way, what piano this is, today we are using the Grandeur by Native Instruments. But for the purpose of this principle of this video, you can use the Steinway piano in Logic. That is probably one of my favorite preset pianos if you want to use that as well. Again, like, we're not so focused about the piano today in this one. We're more focused about this section, this little sum that I put together, which is the string section. I will show you a little bit of mixing as well to make your strings sound more interesting, because if you're someone who just has Logic stock plugins, you will have the studio strings, so it won't sound the same as this. I'm using Omnisphere Hollywood strings for this, so they do sound a little bit more better and a lot more polished. But again, this is all about the principles of this video. So you can break it down into 4 main fundamentals, or 4 or 5, but for the purpose of the video we'll only stick with 4. The 5th one is more just like little ad-libs and additions to the tops, but the 4 principles are: you've got to have the bass notes, the main body, the melodic value, and the development. So starting with the bass, the root note, we have very low octave, just bass strings playing the root notes. Very simple, and it sounds like this. So again, very easy to do, and it's just always a good basis and starting point for a string section, because you've got to cover the lows and the highs to make a really nice full string section, which is going to surround your mix. We'll talk about the stereo panning a little bit later, but let's just build this string section up. So the next section I added was the main body. That's second part I was saying. Now the main body is the part that maybe if you were a beginner to write a string section, you would just do, and this would be your string section. And this is playing the chords in, literally only moves with the actual piano, because that's what we're following in this song. So when you listen to this, it's just chords. It's really nice though, really full, and that's why I call it the main body, because this is the main structure. You call it the skeleton of your string section. Like, everything's there, it holds everything else in place because you write around this. So I've used 2 hands playing the chords. So you can see we've got 2 lots here. So we're not just playing a triad, we're playing 2 octaves of chords to really cover not only more of the frequency spectrum of the strings, but again, like the body and layering up on the strings. So that's why you only really need 4 for this. So that's pretty simple. So let's have a listen to the bass strings and the main body. So we've got the bass and the main body covered. And it already sounds warm. Part of that is down to the software I'm using. Logic, you'd have to mix it a bit more, but I will get to that, how you can make your strings sound a bit better. Now, the next thing is the melodic value, I call. You got to have melodic value in a string section, because that is what's going to create movement in a string section, make it more interesting and better to listen to. So I added the melodic value, which is a melody or a more melodic solo violin. And it's just playing the chords. It starts as arpeggios, but the one thing I love to do in a string section is when it's like in a section, like say like the chorus here, I like to suddenly go on a tangent away from what it's doing and break the cycle. So I started it here playing thirds of the chords. So if you don't know what a third of a chord is, imagine you're playing a triad with 3 fingers, the C major chord, like C, E, and G. What I mean by the third is, so if the C chord is playing, I'm going to be playing an E, which is the middle of that triad that you play down. And then when the next chord is a G, so I'll be playing the B, because the B is the third in that triad. And again, A minor, I'd be playing C, and F, I'd be playing A. So that's what I mean by third, because it gives a little bit of edge and creates a bit more of a harmony. So if you listen to this by itself, it just, it doesn't really sound like it has much value. But when you play this in context with a string section which is playing the chords, all of a sudden you've got harmonizing. And how much better does that sound? Adding more value to the feel of the track than just playing the root notes all the way up. Because if you're just playing the root notes all the way up, it makes the string section sound samey. And then what I mean by halfway through breaking away on a tangent from the sort of harmonizing, I've now got a descending melody. So I will let you listen to this with the bass. Again, it's all about creating that movement. Now, one thing that's even better for using the melodic value of a string section is creating a riser to create a proper transition from one section to the next. So here, this is what I would call the pre-chorus section of this beat that I made, and then this is the chorus here that comes in. You may notice, and what I like about this MIDI thing is you can really see what I've tried to do, is I've created a rising pattern to end the pre-chorus, so it feels like we're getting a build to the chorus. So we're not having any, like white noise rises in, or we're not having like some drum fills like speeding up to, I don't know, whatever the million things you can think of to build up, because that's what you want to do when you create an ascending, because it feels like the song is building up to something. I've used the string for it. So let's have a listen to the pre into the chorus. Turn up a bit. Okay, this is the pre. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Ending on a high note. So when the chorus comes in, you're like, okay, we were expecting this big build, and we've got it. So it's so simple. And again, this is a very simple string section. I would probably go to town on this a lot more if I was thinking I wanted to build a proper, massive string section. But for my type beats, I tend to like to keep simple sometimes with these sorts of beats, because sometimes it is good to be simple, because that's what some people want. Now, the last thing I add is the fourth element, development, because we've got a lot of the melodic value is a little bit samey, but it does change up. This is pretty similar, the chords and the lower bass octave all the way through. So we need something to change, something to be added in the chorus, because development is very key in productions. So that's where the development section comes in, and it's very simple. Again, because you've got to remember, when I'm making instrumentals, there is a vocal playing over the top, so I'm trying not to overkill productions, because the vocal will be adding a lot of development and adding a lot of the production value to the song as well. So for the choruses, I just like to start playing around with octaves. because it creates that little bit of extra rise, and we could have a little bit something in the brighter side of the string section. So I added some octaves playing a first and fifth of the chords. Again, very simple, and that's the whole point of this string section. It's very simple, but it's effective. So now if we listen here, this is our bridge section, which again, I've got it ending with a little bit of a build, and then you will notice the lift that we get in the chorus. It's like, it's like a breath of fresh air. And that basically is the main principle. Again, so that the four principles of building a good string section is having the root note, having the main body, the melodic value, and the development. If you have these four things in building a string section, you can't go wrong. Another thing as well is a lot of the time in string sections, sometimes there is no such thing as clashing notes, because I feel like clashing notes create emotion. I purposely put in a note here somewhere, I can't remember exactly where it was, where it might have sounded got a bit edgy, but a string section is probably one of or a string instrument is probably the closest thing to emitting emotion to a vocal. A vocal emits a lot of the emotion in the song, how we sing it, but strings have such an emotional level value to productions who are doing the right way, and having them little clashy notes adds like storytelling value. So like, it's edgy, or it's a difficult sort of like note to hear, which you could replicate into like a storyline where, if you're listening to something, it could be like a heartbreak, or it's just something bad. Or on the other side, if you have it perfectly harmonizing, it sounds happy, and you're like, oh, this is amazing, I feel great. So again, strings like a very valued part of productions, and if you follow this rule of four, you can't go wrong. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to play you a snippet of the song again for you to listen to, and then we can close this video up. So there you go, guys, that is the video for today. If you enjoyed this video, smash that subscribe button right now, as it is the best way to support the channel. And also comment below if you have any recommendations for future beats that I should be making and breaking down in future videos in certain artists, genres, or styles. So yeah, guys, keep making music, keep refining your craft, and I will see you in the next video.